Well, it's just about that time. Get started here on the Panther-Lair Show, Wednesday night, September 7th, 2022. Less than 48 hours from the start of the Pitt, Tennessee game on Saturday at Acrisure Stadium. It's actually a 3:30 kickoff, so we're really inside 48 hours from the end. Wait, 48 hours? What am I talking about? It's Wednesday. We're like 3 days away from the game. We're inside of 72 hours. If you read the description for the live show that I put up there to attract people, I'm going to have to edit it when we publish it on YouTube and push it on the podcast and put it on the website. Of course, you get the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I said it's inside of 48 hours until the game, but we're actually inside of 72 hours till the game. Geez, it seems like it's a really long time away. This whole week, it's a short week because of Labor Day. My schedule's all thrown off. I think I have like an internal rhythm or a biological clock that kicks in the fall where like your weeks just make sense. You know what I mean? Like by the time you get to Thursday night, there's like the Thursday night college game. And then you have Friday, and then you have Saturday of all-day college games, Sunday of all-day NFL games, the Monday night game, and then you're into your week. I've just been so thrown off and screwed up because, first of all, Pitt played on the Thursday night. And that break from Thursday to like the following Saturday is always a long one. It gets me all messed up. It's a long time between games. But like, you know, we dove into the fall football season with games on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. I mean, we had college football, what did I just count? 5 days straight. And I don't know which way, and then it's a short week. There was no school on Monday. I don't know which way is up. I'm not into the fall rhythm yet. I'm not into fall just yet. And I'm not talking about pumpkin spice lattes and the cool weather and sweaters and all that stuff. I'm talking about just sort of the rhythm of the week. By next week or 2 weeks from now, we're going to be into that rhythm of the week where, you know, you come into Monday, you know, after 2 days of football, college, and NFL, you got that Monday night game to look forward to, and then it's Tuesday, and we'll have that regular pattern. I'll settle into the content schedule and all that stuff. But right now I'm all screwed up. But 72 hours until probably by this point on Saturday night around 8:30, the game's going to be over. We're going to know if Pitt beat Tennessee or if Pitt suffered their first loss of the season. And we're all going to feel a certain kind of way about this team and their prospects for the year. And I have a feeling that it's not going to be... I don't feel like there's going to be much middle ground by the time we get to the end, by the time we get to Saturday night. I feel like it's either going to be, well, they'll be lucky, not they'll be lucky to win 8 wins, but this is going to be a team that wins between 8 and 10, or this is going to be a team that's going to be right in the national conversation in mid-October and into November. I think that's going to be the fan reaction as we come out of this game on Saturday night. It's going to be one or the other based on the outcome, based on win or lose. And I think even if they win in a similar fashion to the way they beat West Virginia, where maybe they don't look great and they have some holes and some flaws and some areas where you say, boy, they can't keep playing like that. But if they still get out with a win, I think we'll feel pretty good about it. And I think if they, even if they play well and lose, I think there might be a little bit of optimism taken out of it. But some of those big picture, down the road national implications and aspirations and goals are going to take a big hit with a loss on Saturday. There's a lot to talk about on that front, and we'll get to it all shortly. We certainly have plenty to talk about on this week's Panther-Lair Show. I'm glad to see everybody kind of rolling in, joining the live stream here on a Wednesday night. It's always fun to have a good conversation. It's always fun to have people in the chat screen and sharing comments and asking questions, and that's always fun to do. It's always fun to get together here on a Wednesday night at 8:30 and talk a little Pitt sports on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Remember, that's our YouTube page. You can subscribe to it at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We put a lot of video content out, and that's simply what it comes down to. I think we've really tried to step it up with video content, really dating back to the beginning of the summer when we started doing the weekend recap videos every Monday morning just to bring you up to speed on everything that happened over the course of the weekend. And then, starting, I guess, 2.5 weeks ago, we started doing the Morning Pit, which is like a video that comes out every morning just with some Pitt talking points, any news, recapping any news, and just sort of getting you ready for the day with some Pitt talk. And look, you don't get a lot of Pitt talk. And, for a while I felt like this show was the only sort of regular source of Pitt talk that you were going to get this Wednesday night show, this podcast that we put out and this live stream that we do. But we decided to start adding that daily dose of Pitt talk to start your day Monday through Friday. And so that's what we do. It could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20, 25, 30 minutes, however long it takes to talk about the things we want to talk about. Had some fun episodes so far this week. Our one that came out earlier today about the most interesting thing anyone said this week. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to have a preview of Tennessee with an up close look at what the Volunteers did in their 59-10 season opening win over Ball State, and kind of what we should expect to see out of them as they take on Pitt this weekend at Acrisure Stadium. But just day after day, we've got new content coming out there. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Click that subscribe button, and you will never miss any of our new content that comes out. If you're worried, like, I really like the morning Pitt, but I always forget to check and see if it's out now. I don't see it on social media or on the website on Panther-Lair.com. Well, you click that subscribe button, and you're always going to know, because you'll get a little notification that tells you, hey, new videos out. Or when we go live on Wednesday nights at 8:30, or when we go live after a Pitt game, we do our post-game show. We had a lot of fun doing that at like 2 in the morning, or I think we started around 1:30 after the West Virginia game. This one on Saturday will be a little bit more of a reasonable hour. Probably, 3:30 game, probably shooting for a 9:30, 10 o'clock start. But if you want to know exactly when we're going to go live, click subscribe, and then you'll get a notification. You'll know what's up, and you know what the plan is. So do that for sure. Make sure you like this video too, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then check it out, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. You guys have been hearing me say this for years. It's been true for years, and it continues to be true. And it probably isn't going to stop being true. Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com. And message boards where you can talk about everything with your closest Pitt fan friends. All the big Pitt topics that have come up during the game, before the game against West Virginia, since the game against West Virginia. Everybody's talking about it at Panther-Lair.com. They read something that somebody wrote somewhere else, and they come to Panther-Lair.com to talk about it, because it's the best community of Pitt sports fans that you're going to find on the internet, in my opinion. So I hope you come and check it out, Panther-Lair.com. All right, as we head into this game on Saturday, and it's interesting, there was a thread on the message boards. I think it got posted today or yesterday. I forget which day it came out, but it's still active right now. And the thread was basically like, so is everyone just conceding this game to Tennessee? And it's funny because I read that headline, I read through the thread a little bit, and I get it. I get where you're coming from, that it's sort of not necessarily doom and gloom, but here's the reality, all right? The number 17 team in the country opened the season with a win over a Power 5 opponent and is now a touchdown dog at home. All right, 6.5, 7 points. That's what you can get. Pitt plus 6.5, plus 7 in this game. Tennessee favored to win by a touchdown on the road against a ranked opponent. And I think when I talk to Pitt fans, when I look at it, and I shouldn't say entirely because I was just texting with a Pitt fan before we started the show, and he was talking about, I might take Pitt with those points. I think they're going to win outright. And so it's not entirely the fan base, but I think there were enough flaws, shortcomings, and vulnerabilities exposed or on display in the West Virginia game that despite the win, fans are concerned. And not unjustifiably so. Look, I have my own concerns about this game. Before we even talk about the offense, there are certain realities with this defense. And one reality that's been a reality for this defense for the last 8 years. I mean, dating back to 2015, there have been realities about this defense. And we've seen it year after year after year. They can get beat with the pass. They can get beat downfield. Teams that run certain types of passing attacks can take advantage of the way Pitt plays defense. And they can get opportunities for shots. And we've seen year after year, we've seen teams do this. And it's nothing new. You could go 2015, I'm trying to think who really kind of attacked them in that way. But obviously 2016, that was just week after week after week of teams attacking Pitt with the passing game and just, Deshaun Watson had like 600 passing yards or something like that in the Clemson game. I think Brad Kaya went off in the game against Miami. Daniel Jones had a big game for Duke. Or no, but he didn't have a big game for Duke. Who else? Oh, I'm thinking of Mitch Trubisky. Actually, man, all these AFC North quarterbacks, and Watson and Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, I think had a big game. I think he was the quarterback in 2016. He was definitely the quarterback in 2017 when they brutalized this defense at Heinz Field. 2018, I mean, North Carolina again. UCF did it, and we'll have to come back to that. 2019, not as much, but 2020, I think you saw some teams that were able to do it. And then even last year, I mean, there were times where, the Western Michigan game comes to mind, the Miami game to a certain extent, although there were issues with the bad tackling in that game. But there are vulnerabilities in this defense. And I think they are largely risks that Pat Narduzzi is willing to take, that he's going to try and create pressure. He's going to try and disrupt the timing on the outside. And if you want to shoot those 50-50 balls, he'll take his chances with that. And I think that's been his MO back to Michigan State. And the problem, though, and it's a problem I have confidence in Pitt solving, but the problem is West Virginia ran on them. To the tune of, really more than 200 yards, if not for sack yardage that came off and brought that total down to 190. This would have broken a streak of 26 consecutive games not giving up 200 rushing yards. It had been back to the 2019 Boston College game was the last time Pitt allowed a team to have 200 net rushing yards. And this West Virginia game would have broken that streak if not for the sack yardage that brought the net total down under 200. Pitt has led the ACC in rush defense each of the last 3 seasons. They've been top 12 nationally in each of the last 3 seasons, and they were 12 3 years ago. They were 6-3 or 3-6, respectively, the last 2 seasons. They've always been good against the run, but there were certain things exposed in this game against West Virginia. It's very concerning. Tennessee, in the game against Ball State, had 2 backs combined for about 151 yards on the ground. As a team, they went over 200 yards rushing, again against Ball State, but they at least have some ability to do it, and they've got some good athletes at running back. I think 2 guys and a pretty talented, 2 experienced players and a talented freshman in Tennessee's backfield. And so there's a concern there, because there's a concern that if you can't make, and this is what Pat Narduzzi would say, this is not my words, but if you can't make a team one-dimensional, you're going to have problems. Now, in the past, it hasn't been a magical elixir, because when they made teams one-dimensional, guys like Mitch Trubisky and Deshaun Watson and Western Michigan attacked through the pass, and they were able to have success despite being one-dimensional, although Western Michigan, I think, even ran it a little bit better than you would expect in that game. But you can't afford to let them get the run game going and then attack with the passing game off of an effective running game. If that happens, I really don't like Pitt's chances of winning. If they give up 200 rushing yards to Tennessee, I really think they have slimmed the note. I would say sub 5% chance of winning this game. They cannot let that rushing game get going. Now, they might end up giving up 400 passing yards to Hendon Hooker. That is entirely possible. I'm not going to say it's likely, but it's entirely possible. They cannot let the run game get going, though. Here in this situation, and I know we don't like to do this, but I do give the coaches the benefit of the doubt. When it comes to fixing the rush defense, I'm not too concerned. Not yet. I believe that they can fix it. All right, and because the precedent indicates that they're good at coaching run defense. Now, they had 2 new starters at outside linebacker, one a young player, one an older player, but either way, both making their first career starts, and the older player playing in Pitt's defense for the first time. And so I think there were some issues that came out of that. I think there were times where the defensive line didn't do what they needed to do. And it's not, you can't paint with such a broad brush that, the outside linebackers just played terrible, because they also made some big plays. I think Shane Simon made some big plays. I think Bengali Kamara was the team's leading tackler. He made some plays. But they had a few moments where they had lapses and they ended up going for big gains. The defensive line overall, I thought, played well. They needed to get more pressure on JT Daniels earlier in the game. Overall, they played well, but they had a few moments of lapses combined with the outside linebackers having some lapses, and you end up giving up some big plays. You can't have those mistakes this week, because Tennessee's passing attack is just that dangerous. And West Virginia's passing attack was dangerous too. But I think Tennessee has another good quarterback, And after we watch them this weekend, we can debate, Hendon Hooker versus JT Daniels. But I think Tennessee probably has the better group of wide receivers. And, that's with West Virginia having a pretty good one in Bryce Ford Wheaton. So there's a real threat there. And this is where we bring in, even if I'm optimistic about the coaches solving the run defense, that pass defense is still going to be a problem. And it's going to be a handful to try and stop that passing game. And here's where we bring in the other half of it. And this is something I've talked about a bunch. I'm going to write about it in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. Talk about it on the Morning Pit this week. It's just, we have to find out what Kedon Slovis can do. We have to find out what Frank Cignetti can do. We have to find out what Konate Mumfield is capable of. We have to find out what Bub Means is capable of. We have to find out what this offensive line is capable of. We have to find out what Izzy Abanikanda is capable of. We have our thoughts about all these guys. We have our ideas about all these guys. We think we know what they can do, and we think we've seen what they can do. But we actually need to see it this weekend in a game where they're probably going to need to score 40. I think if you are Pitt, if you're Frank Cignetti, if you're Pat Narduzzi, you need to go into this game thinking 40 or bust, man. And we need to push that number up as far as we can. It's got to be 40 or bust. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that Tennessee is going to score 42, but I'm saying you don't feel safe until you get that into the 40s. And even then, you don't take your foot off the gas. You might try and run more, but you don't take your foot off the gas. And we have to find out if this offense is built to do that. We have to find out if this offense is capable of playing like that. We have to find out if these players and this coordinator can operate like that for 60 minutes. They had a pretty decent showing in the second half against West Virginia. Scored 3 touchdowns. Do the math on that. You score 3 touchdowns in one half. That projects the 6 touchdowns in a game. That projects the 42 points. Love it. Add in a defensive touchdown for good measure, and you're pushing 50. Great. Get a field goal even, and you're topping 50, Or get those 6 touchdowns you were on pace for and add a field goal or 2, and now you're over 45. Now you got a real chance to win no matter what happens with your pass defense. It's a great plan. And in the second half, they more or less executed it. Can they do it for 60 minutes? Can they do it against Tennessee's defense? Can they do it? I don't know. And the answer to that question is going to be the answer to the question of, will Pitt win? And because I don't know the answers to those questions, and because my first reaction off of watching that first game is not so sure they can do that, I don't know. It makes it hard to pick Pitt to win this game. It makes it tough. Now, I talked a lot earlier today, on the Morning Pit today, about Pat Narduzzi saying that the wide receivers weren't running their routes well, they weren't getting to their spots, they had bad departure angles, and all these things. And that gives me some confidence. That it wasn't just a Kedon Slovis issue, it wasn't the plays that were being called by Frank Cignetti, although I think there were issues with Kedon Slovis, I think there were issues with the plays that were being called, but that there were issues in the other elements of the execution of the passing game. Still need to fix the run game. Still need to block better. Kedon Slovis still needs to get rid of the ball quicker. Still need to get the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. The running back, Izzy Abanikanda still needs to find the hole and hit it quicker. There are a lot of things that have to improve from week 1 to week 2. Coaches love to say you make your biggest jump from week 1 to week 2. They need it. They need it because what's laying out there for them is an opportunity to make a statement. To make a statement that they are legitimately one of the better, if not best teams in the country. That they are legitimately a team that belongs in the top 15, maybe the top 12, maybe the top 10, depending on how they look. That's what's at stake here. And an opportunity to still be in the conversation nationally when you get to mid-October and into November. Now, obviously they have to take care of business between now and then. But that's really what's at stake here. Now, you could lose this game, and you still have every opportunity to go 10-2. You still have every opportunity to win 10 games this season, which is something, we talked about when I made my preseason prediction. When I predicted Pitt would go 10-2, I said that, the 2 most likely losses were Tennessee and Miami. Those and in some ways maybe the only acceptable losses. Anything else would be kind of a bad loss. Now, I mean, we'll see what the perception of these teams are as we move through the season. But at the outset of the season, looking down the 12-game schedule, Tennessee, Miami were the two acceptable losses. Two teams you wouldn't say, well, that was a bad loss. And I guess we'll keep up with that train of thought. I mean, nothing has changed my mind about that yet. Miami and Tennessee blew out non-Power 5 opponents in week 1, so I guess they're still looking like the best teams on the schedule. And so you still have an opportunity for that goal. And if you get to 10-2, you're going to have a real opportunity to win the Coastal and get back to the ACC championship game, depending on what Miami does and what your result is against them. But the opportunity is there now. The opportunity is there to make a statement. And it's a statement that will only be good for 6 days. Because a week later, you have another opportunity to make another statement. You go to Western Michigan with a chance to play up there and avenge last season's loss and, more importantly, avoid another loss. But you have an opportunity to make a statement to the nation that you are part of this conversation and you should be considered as such. And that's exciting. But there's some pressure, and I think the pressure is going to be on. And I think Tennessee's looking at it as an opportunity as well. And the pressure is going to be on for Tennessee, too. And so we start looking at this game and we're saying, can they play in that kind of environment? Can they win in that kind of game? Well, I don't know. And we'll find out in less than 72 hours, right? We'll find out in less than 72 hours. All right, let's jump into our comments and questions. Remember, you can go in the chat screen right now. You can post your comment. We'll read it and respond to it. Post your question. We'll answer it. If you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, you can always hit the super chat button, hit that little $ down at the bottom, and contribute a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that for sure. And we'll definitely make sure we get to your comment and your question. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you a little bit about a friend of mine, and you probably know him if you're on Twitter, you follow Pitt social medias and things like that. His name is Chris Gates. He's on Twitter at Chris_Gates. And first of all, he's a cool guy and he's a Pitt fan. Funny guy, smart guy on Twitter. Known him for a long time. I have a classic photo from the CBI, and the press area at the CBI tournament 10 years ago. And Chris is there. He's one of the few the dedicated who were there in the press area for the CBI tournament years and years ago. But Chris, I don't know if you know this about Chris, but he's actually an online fitness coach. He works with people all over the world to help build muscle and burn fat and improve health. Improve their health through fitness and nutrition. I mean, he could probably get you buff, but not just get you buff. He's going to help you get healthy. And the way he does, he guides and supports his clients every step of the way, so you can just show up, put in the work, and have confidence that what you're doing is working. It's all online. You connect with Chris online. You don't need to, go to a gym to see a personal trainer. You do it online. Chris coaches you online and helps you achieve your goals. He's a huge Pitt fan. He loves working with other Pitt fans, and he's a huge fan of Panther-Lair.com. He's been on the site for a long time. He's always here on the live podcast, doesn't always chime in on the questions, but I know he's always checking in on it. And so he wanted to find a way to show some support. So he reached out to me. He was like, hey, man, can I get a spot on the podcast? I said, absolutely. We can do this, Chris. We can give you a shout out. So he's a sponsor of the podcast now. We very much appreciate him for that. And if you're looking for some solutions, a way to get healthier, a way to get stronger, build muscle, burn fat, and just generally improve your health and your fitness, check it out. Go to chrisgatesfitness.com. He's got hundreds of free articles on there about fitness and nutrition. So if you just want to get some information, go to chrisgatesfitness.com. But if you want to get involved with online coaching, with actual sort of individualized coaching plan from Chris, go to chrisgatesfitness.com. You can sign up for, or you can apply for a coaching connection with Chris. And actually, if you mention Panther-Lair in the Panther-Lair podcast, you'll get 75% off your first month. So chrisgatesfitness.com. If you're interested in health solutions, fitness solutions, building muscle, burning fat, all those things, just living a healthier lifestyle, you got to check him out. He's a big Pitt fan, Chris Gates. at chrisgatesfitness.com. Remember, mention Panther-Lair. Mention the Panther-Lair podcast. You'll get 75% off your first month. And follow him on Twitter too, Chris_Gates. He's great with like fitness posts and content on Twitter, but he's also great for like Pitt stuff on Twitter and just good jokes and just generally good content. He's a good person to follow at Chris_Gates. And then remember the website, chrisgatesfitness.com. Thanks, Chris, for supporting the podcast. We very much appreciate it. Let's jump in here. We got a super chatter. First super chatter jumps. It's Joe New. He says, can you give us a rundown on Tennessee's defensive scheme? Also a comment. West Virginia tried to pick on A.J. Woods in the beginning of the game, and he did great. Well, A.J. Woods gave up a touchdown. I think he gave up West Virginia's first touchdown. Let me look. Got it right here. Yeah. Fade pass. 10-yard fade pattern into the end zone. And A.J. Woods actually, I don't know if he played again after that. I'd written him down coming in on West Virginia's next drive after that. That was early in the second quarter. West Virginia had a drive that started one play at the end of the first quarter, and then the rest of the drive ended in a touchdown. And then on West Virginia's next drive in the second quarter, I wrote it down that Woods played, but then after that, he didn't appear again in the game. I don't know if he played on special teams, but he wasn't there on defense. And so I don't know if he got hurt. I don't think he got hurt. I haven't gotten any indication that he was hurt, but he didn't play again. I think MJ Devonshire was the star of the defensive backs in that game. Certainly not just for his pick six, so that's a big part of it, but I think he played pretty well overall in that game. I think A.J. Woods has some work to do, at least from, how to defend a fade pattern in the end zone and that kind of thing. But I'm going to be interested to see what the cornerback rotation looks like this week. I mean, Marquez Williams is going to start. I think MJ Devonshire earned himself a starting job. We'll see how A.J. Woods and Rashad Battle get into the rotation there. And maybe if they even go deeper and go to like somebody like Rylan Gandy, who played on special teams on Thursday night. I'm guessing it'll probably just be the four guys, Devonshire, Williams, Woods, and Battle. It'll be interesting to see how they rotate them through. As far as Tennessee's defense, I don't have the breakdown of Tennessee's defense just yet. I was planning on looking into that more tomorrow, post some stuff on Panther-Lair.com. But I'll tell you one interesting thing, all right? So they played Ball State. They only gave up 10 points. Not exactly, I don't know how much you read into that. It's Ball State breaking a new quarterback. But here's the curious stat. And somebody else pointed this out. I forget who, but then I looked it up and confirmed it. Yeah. Ball State's quarterback dropped back. He attempted 43 passes and he had a scramble. So he dropped back 44 times. 44 dropbacks. Tennessee didn't have any sacks. And I don't really understand that. I didn't watch the game. Obviously I was at the Pitt game. And so I don't know if he was just getting rid of the ball quick, if Tennessee was close and they just couldn't. I mean, it's not like he completed a high percentage of his passes, but he was getting rid of the ball. But if Tennessee can't get more pressure than that, if Tennessee can't sack, Ball State's quarterback, I wonder, it makes you, it probably makes them a little concerned. I'm actually looking up the stats on Pro Football Focus here of how many pressures Pro Football Focus credit them with. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So they are crediting with 16 pressures on 43 dropbacks. So that's a pretty high percentage. So, I mean, they were putting pressure on the Ball State quarterback, but they didn't get to him at all. I really think if you give Keaton Slovis time, he can and will pick you apart. Receivers need to be in the right place. He needs to see the tight end and all those other things that we already talked about. But I think if you give him time, he will pick you apart and have a lot of success. And that'd be a problem for Tennessee. Tennessee is going to try to get after Keaton Slovis. They're going to feel like they have to get after Keaton Slovis. Attempting to establish the running game would be one way to try to counter that. But they're going to have to get the ball out quick. I don't know if you want to do as much 6 O-line, 6 offensive linemen formations like they did on Thursday night. I don't know if that really helped all that much. I think he's just got to get rid of the ball quicker. I think the receivers need to be in the right spots and be open for him. I think he needs to look for the tight ends, and I think he needs to get rid of the ball. And so that's going to be something to watch if Tennessee can get pressure on the quarterback maybe a little bit better, or at least get to the quarterback a little bit better than they did against Ball State. Will Z says, Chris, talk me off the ledge. Give me hope that Pitt could beat Tennessee this weekend. Well, I mean, I don't think it's that hard to give you hope that Pitt can beat Tennessee. Look, if you want to look at it optimistically, all right? Keaton Slovis goes 16 of 24 for 308 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions. One could have been interception, but it wasn't. He had another really long play that was dropped by Bub Means. He had another potential probably touchdown where he just barely missed with Kanate Mumfield. And there again, Mumfield might not have had the sharpest details on that route. He did pretty well against a pretty good defensive line and one of the best defensive linemen that Pitt is going to face all season. So that's a good thing. I think now that it has happened in the game, remember on that first Monday press conference that Pat Narduzzi had 2 weeks ago, he said the wide receivers are giving him chest pains, largely due to details, right? I think that was certainly a problem on Thursday night, those details for the wide receivers. Well, it has happened in a game now, and maybe that's what Narduzzi and Frank Signetti and Taekwon Underwood needed to really make the point to these guys of how focused on that attention to details they need to be. I think there's room for improvement from the wide receivers. I think they made some big plays. I think Jared Wayne, Kanate Mumfield, Bub Means, and even Jaden Bradley all made big plays. I think there's more they can get out of Jalen Barden. I think there's more they can get out of Gavin Bartholomew. I feel like this passing game scratched the surface of what it can be. And I think that's a good thing. They were able to get out of a game not playing their best and showing that there's a lot of room for improvement in the passing game, but a lot of potential in the passing game. And, I think you could be excited about what Mumfield can do, about what Means can do, about what Wayne does and has done, about what Bradley did. And then we know what Gavin Bartholomew can do. I think Jalen Barton has explosive potential for this passing game. I'm excited to see how this passing game develops over the course of 12 games. Now, it just so happens that in week 2, they got to play really, really well. They're going to have to play at the top of their game, or at least closer to it than they were a week ago. But I think it's got a chance to be really, really good. Defensively, I feel like it's going to be a feast or famine kind of game. I really do. And I've said that before about this defense in the past, about Pat Narduzzi's defenses being feast or famine, that, they either sack the quarterback or give up a long touchdown pass. And I look, prepare yourselves now. And if this ends up being wrong, that'll be great. You'll feel very relieved, okay? But prepare yourselves now. You're going to be at the stadium on Saturday. You're going to be having a great time. It's going to be beautiful weather. You're going to be with all your buddies. It's going to be all royal blue all over the stadium. It's going to look great. It's going to be a great crowd. It's not going to be sold out, but it's going to be packed enough that it's going to feel like a great environment. And Tennessee is going to drop like a 65 hit on a 65-yard touchdown pass. It's going to happen. They're going to hit on long touchdown passes, probably a couple. And they're going to have a couple near misses where you say, oh my God, what is going to happen here? If they connect on those passes again, we're dead. Okay, this is going to happen. Prepare yourselves now. We know this. We've watched this for 7+ years. We've watched this since the very beginning. We know it's going to happen. Okay, prepare yourself. Steel yourself. Be ready for it. And understand that Pitt has some good weapons. Pitt has a good quarterback, and Pitt should be able to protect the quarterback better than they did a week ago. Prepare yourself for that. Now, if it ends up not happening, if it ends up that Pitt's defense plays lights out and they don't give up anything to Hendon Hooker, then you'll feel like you just escaped the gallows, right? You'll be walking away from the electric chair. So either way, you win. But prepare yourself for it. Okay, know that this is probably going to be a back and forth game, a high scoring game where it's going to feel like, holy cow, how many more times can Pitt score to keep up with these guys, or can Pitt score to keep up with these guys at all? It's probably going to be that kind of game. And I could be wrong. I predict these things wrong all the time. I'm classically wrong. Almost sort of like, it's almost my calling card to be wrong about these kinds of things. And it very well could be the case on Saturday. But that's what I think it's going to be. And so be ready for it. It's going to be another long game. It's going to be another like 4.5 hour game. And it's going to be cardiac arrest type of game. Let's see. So Will Z started the questions by saying, Chris, talk me off the ledge. Give me hope that Pitt could beat Tennessee this weekend. Tyler Hoffman follows up and says, getting 7 points at home seems like a gift. Talk me out of Pitt +7. So we're going the opposite ways here. Let's go to, scoresandodds.com. They list betting trends. And let's see if we can find the trends here and see where the money is. They used to always list this. Maybe they don't list it anymore on where the trends are, where the money is on Pitt's game against Tennessee. So Scores and Odds still has it. Wait. Oh, opened at 3.5. That's right. So it's -6.5. I don't see I don't see percentages. I don't know who. It looks like, yeah, most of the money's coming in on Tennessee to cover. 78%, 76%, 78% on Tennessee to cover the 6.5. So for some reason, the number 17 team in the country is getting 7 points at home. And for some reason, close to 80% of the country is going for it, at least according to scoresandodds.com. Now, sometimes those betting trends, you need to see later in the week. That's when a lot of the money will come in and really kind of show you which way the public is leaning. But I don't know if people are just, we're really unimpressed by the win over West Virginia, if people are thinking too much about Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, if people are really high on a 59-10 win over Ball State. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to tell you, Tyler. Like my thought on betting this game is don't. I know it's a home team, a home dog, a 7-point home dog, Power 5 versus Power 5, both 1-0, both ranked, and one team, the road team, is giving 7 points. That seems like an easy, obvious choice. I think it's too early in the season. For me, it's too early in the season to tell you what to do when it comes to betting on Pitt. Because I just don't know. I don't know who they are yet. And I don't know what they're going to be. I'm not sure I would have bet on Pitt in week 2 last year either. Because I didn't know who they were going to be and who they were. And that's the way I feel about this offense right now. The defense, I feel like, is going to settle into kind of being the same defense they've been the past few seasons. The offense is really the biggest question mark. And I don't know. I don't know what that offense is going to be this season. So, Tyler, actually, I'll talk you out of taking Pitt +7 on those grounds that you shouldn't bet on this game at all. It's just too unknown. I can't sit here and tell you what I think is going to happen because I don't know. Vincent Calfo says, do you think Izzy Abanikanda had trouble finding holes running from under center, or is he more of a shotgun sidecar runner? Seems like we couldn't get him out in space on the edge. That's a good question. I have to look more at Izzy Abanikanda's runs and where they worked and where they didn't and why they worked and why they didn't. I think it was just remarkable how, and almost all the running, whether it was Abanikanda or Rodney Hammond, almost all the running went to the right side in that game on Thursday night. It was very curious to see. I mean, all but maybe like 3 carries were designed to go to the right side. And for whatever reason, Hammond just seemed to hit the hole quicker. He seemed to find the hole faster. He seemed to get through the hole quicker and just make things happen in a way that Abanikanda really didn't. And so I don't know what Izzy Abanikanda needs to do differently in this game. I think his patience is one of his strengths. I mean, there were times last season where he was sort of, he reminded you of like a Le'Veon Bell with his patience to the hole and then, slow to let the hole open and then exploding through it. But I think he needs to be quicker getting to the hole. I think things need to happen a little bit faster. And then, yeah, maybe they need to get him out in space, throw him a little bit more, throw to him on swing passes or screens, try different things to get him involved. But I suspect he's going to be the lead running back this week. And so you're going to need to get something out of him. He's going to have a much better game than he had last week. It can't just be one really good play out of like 9-10 touches or whatever it ended up being. He's got to have 20 touches with 15 of them being really good. I mean, he needs to have a big game in this one. Matt Durney says, I honestly have visions of Oklahoma State game from 2017 and Central Florida game from 2018. Hope I am wrong as well. I think you are, and I think you will be wrong. I think even if the defense gives up a bunch of points, I do think the defensive personnel is better now than it was in 2017 or 2018. I think their depth is better. I think they obviously have holes, but I think, like I talk about like a feast or famine defense. I mean, I could see them giving up plays in the passing game, giving up, yards and points, but also getting the occasional key sack, forcing the occasional key turnover to kind of shift momentum, where if they are giving up a bunch of points and yards, they can at least cut off a couple drives and not just force punts, but get the offense favorable field position to try and chip away and get back, some of those points. So I don't think it's going to be like those two games. I think there are points where it might feel like one of those two games, but overall, I don't think it's going to be like those two games. I don't know if they're going to win or lose. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. But again, it's tough to predict. Joe News says Izzy needs to get outside versus up the gut. He will find more space. Yeah, I think some of that is true. I think they need to do a little bit more. I think they need to mix both in. You know what I mean? You need to be able to go outside, stretch plays and that kind of thing, tosses with a Abanikanda. But you also need to be able to block and open things up the middle and give him opportunities to make plays there. Spread it out a little bit. Go three wide with a tight end. And run power out of it. You know what I mean? Like try and hit up the middle when you've got the defense spread out a little and make them respect it. And then if you show you can run out of those personnel groupings and those formations, that's going to give you a better opportunity to hit on big plays out of play action. The running game is not going to go away for this team. They're not going to stop trying. They just need to figure out what they can do and what they're able to do. And this has been one of my big themes all week, that I think Frank Cignetti came out of that game on Thursday night with a lot of information. I think he learned a lot of lessons, maybe more lessons than the players did. We always talk about, coaches always talk about teachable moments and what did the players learn. I think the coaches learned a lot. I think Frank Cignetti learned a lot about Keaton Slovis. I think he learned a lot about what his offensive line can and can't do. I think he learned a lot about what his running backs can and can't do. I think he learned a lot about his receivers. I think he learned a lot. Because you go through all of spring ball, you go through all of training camp, but none of it is a real game. None of it is the real thing where you're out there and you're playing a real game, and defenses are doing things you've never seen before, and they're mixing it up on you and changing around and defending you differently than you expected to. None of it can simulate that experience. And I think Cignetti learned a lot about his team from that game. And we'll see how he implements it this week. Super Chatter, John Leffler says, who's the worst offensive line starter and who's the best backup? Who's the worst offensive line starter? I mean, you hate to be mean-spirited about it like that, but I mean, there's a reality. You rank guys 1 through 5. I don't think Matt Gonsalves played all that well. I think he had some lapses. I think a lot of the pressure came from the right side. I think Owen Drexel got blown up a little bit going through the middle. The top backup, I think Branson Taylor came in on the last drive and played well. I think Branson Taylor came in on that game-tying drive and had a good performance. And that's another position I'd be really interested to watch at right tackle. They started, first of all, they put Gabe Hoy in a uniform for pregame warmups, and had him go through the warmups, even though he hadn't really, I don't know, he was limited all of training camp. Let's just say that. He was limited all of training camp, and so it was pretty clear he wasn't going to play. Gonsalves gets to start, plays the whole game until that final drive, and then Taylor comes in, and I think played pretty well in that stretch. I mean, he played pretty well on that possession when he was on the field. So I'll be curious to see what happens this week. If they go back to Gonçalves as a starter, if they start Gonçalves and rotate in Taylor. If they decide to start Taylor, which I think is probably unlikely, or if Hoy comes back, if he's able to jump into the starting lineup or jump into a rotation, I think they have a lot of options there along, at right tackle. And I'm going to be curious to see how they use it. Ryan Jacoby is also one of their better backups, and Blake Zabovic too. They have good depth on this offensive line. They just have to figure out who their 5 best are and how they want to stick with them, if they want to go with something of a rotation. I asked Dave Borbley about the rotation this week, about whether or not he would like to rotate more, or if because I said rotation is pretty unconventional in the offensive line. Is that something you would like to do more? And he said his plan for the West Virginia game was he was just going to feel it out and see how the game was going. He felt like the starters were playing well enough, so he didn't really substitute much other than when they moved Jacoby in there as a tight end and putting Blake Zabovic sometimes to play at right guard with Jake Cradle moving back to like a fullback role. But they didn't really rotate per se at any of the 5 positions, outside of kind of moving those guys in and out until Taylor came in for the final drive. So that's another thing we're going to be watching this week. Do they rotate more on the offensive line? How do they mix it up? Do they change anything personnel-wise there? Be curious to see. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, this is by far the biggest game they will have all season. Boring that they make it to Charlotte or Atlanta. Oh, maybe it means barring they make it to Charlotte or Atlanta. Offense needs to have a good game. I trust the defense can stop Hooker. The biggest game they'll have all season. It's high up there. It's really important. But this is one of those seasons where every time you win, the next game is going to be even more important than the last game. This game is huge. With the setup, with conference and non-conference games, different games have different implications, right? This game is very, very big in terms of Pitt's place in the national collegiate, the national landscape. It's very big in Pitt's chances of being in the conversation as one of the top teams in the nation in mid-October and into November, when it really matters, when you start talking about college football playoff seedings. This game is huge for that. In terms of the Coastal Division, in terms of winning the Coastal, in terms of getting back to the ACC Championship, in terms of potentially winning the ACC for a second year in a row, in terms of winning 10 games, this game is not as important. So it's crucial, it's huge, it's a monster game, it's really significant, and it's all, and it's also possible that you lose this game and still have a whole bunch of your goals still very well within sight. And even talking about the national landscape, when we talk about like where Pitt is, later in the year and where they might be as far as being in the national conversation, you lose a game early, it gives you, this is game number 2. You have 10 more opportunities to work your way back up in there. Say they lose this game and then go on a run heading into the Miami game. They're 10-1 heading into the Miami game. This is purely hypothetical. They're going to be in that conversation. They're going to be a top 10 team. And they're going to be outside, just outside that range of those top 8 or even top 5 or top 6, with a chance to beat Miami and potentially go to the ACC championship game again and win it again. So even if they lose to Tennessee, it puts a real damper on some of their goals. It leaves a whole bunch of their goals still out there, and some of their biggest goals are still not entirely not entirely out of reach. So it's a huge game, but it's not the end of the world either way. And if you win, you by far haven't arrived, because you got to go out to Kalamazoo and do it, and then you got to beat Rhode Island, and then you got to jump into the ACC schedule, and you have to keep winning. Peninsula P says, I think Pitt wins this game. The fact they played a Power 5 rival in week 1 will pay dividends. They will make the necessary adjustments against Tennessee. There is some truth to that. Look, there's some sound logic and reasoning to that theory. Look, they found out where they are. You know what I mean? They found out where they are with the run defense. They found out where they are with the protection schemes. They found out where they are with their own run game. And they found out where they are with the receivers and the route running. They found out where they are with Keaton Slovis. They gained a lot of information from that game. More information than they gained from the UMass game a year ago. All right, because they had a full playbook they were rolling with. One of another great thing Pat Narduzzi said, or a really important thing I think that Pat Narduzzi said. One, there were two at his press conference on Monday. One, he said the wide receivers not sharp enough, not on point enough, weren't getting open, made it look like Kedon Slovis was holding the ball too long. Really, it was a different issue. Two, he said that maybe they just had too much in on defense. You don't know what West Virginia is going to do. You're not sure what to expect, so you put in all kinds of stuff, and you probably had too much in. You overdid it. You overloaded. It was over information. It was too much information. And those things both make perfect sense to me. And I think they're both things that can be adjusted. I think you can hammer those details with the receivers through the week. I think you can pare down what you're trying to do on defense. You played Josh Heupel's teams 3 of the past 4 years, right? Played 18 and 19 against UCF. Last year against Tennessee. This is the 4th time in 5 years you've played Josh Heupel's teams. And there'll be adjustments and there'll be changes, but they're still going to do what they do. You know what you need to have in on defense. You know what you need to be ready to defend. It's not like West Virginia where it was a much bigger crapshoot. You really weren't sure what West Virginia was going to do, and so you probably put in too much on defense. This is what Pat Narduzzi said on Monday, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that would be the case. And so getting that experience against a Power 5 opponent, getting finding out some of these things against top-tier competition, you wouldn't have had that problem against UMass last year. And so you maybe didn't come out with as much information as you did this time around. And the fact that you were able to sneak out with a win, despite all of that, I mean, that's a win-win all over the place. A super chatter trying to jump in here late, as we're coming up, final 10 minutes or so of the show. John Leffler says, I think the O-line is great all around. Worst was definitely a bad way to put it. Branson Taylor is a beast and deserves a serious look. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thank you, John, for supporting the podcast. I appreciate you for being a super chatter. The offensive line, like everybody else, has a whole lot to work on and improve. And Dave Borbely was pretty confident that those guys are going to figure it out. He seemed pretty confident that he knew what... He seemed confident that the players knew what they did wrong and where they missed and where they weren't as sharp as they needed to be and their assignments and all those things in the West Virginia game. And that's encouraging when you have players who know about it, and players who recognize it, because then they should be able to correct it. All right, we got a lot of comments here. I'm going to get to as many as we can. Remember, if you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, you can always be a super chatter like John Leffler was, like Joe New did. You guys can do that, and we'll be sure we get to your comment and question. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time points out, if you subscribe to the podcast, you also have to click the little bell to make sure you get a notification. So you don't get a notification just by subscribing. If you want to know when we go live, if you want to know when we release a new video, you have to click the little notification bell. So make sure you do that. Royce Beacom says, I saw Kedon Slovis getting sacked with a 3-man rush by West Virginia. He took a look at available receivers and patterns and ducked into the wave. Yeah, I think, I'll be the first to admit, I think it looked disjointed and out of sorts and out of sync on Thursday night. A lot of times when he dropped back, and it wasn't like consistent, like, at the beginning he was bad and at the end he was good. The drive before they marched down the field to tie the score, he gets sacked on 2 out of 3 plays. And it wasn't good. They weren't good sacks. He did not respond well to that pressure. I think there were times where he tried to scramble and he probably shouldn't have, times where he needed to get out of the pocket and he didn't. And most of all, he just needed to get rid of the ball. He needs the receivers to do a better job. He needs to find Gavin Bartholomew. I think that can be a safety net for him, a safety valve, whatever you want to call it. I think Bartholomew can play a crucial role in helping Kedon Slovis this week. He's got a lot to do to get better. He has a lot of areas to improve. I don't think there's any question about it. And all that being said, he still went 16 of 24 for 308 yards. He didn't throw an interception. He threw 1 touchdown. He got sacked 5 times, but he didn't turn the ball over. And he led them 92 yards for a game-tying touchdown. I mean, that's, that he did what he needed to do to win the game. And now he needs to do it for 60 minutes instead of 20 out of the final 30, or something like that. Let's see what else we have here. Scott Eisenberg says, outsiders seem to be clowning on Pitt for wanting to run the ball more, and I'll admit at times it didn't look good, but Pitt still scored 31 points on offense with terrible starting field position. Yeah, that's right. They did. And that's something we keep coming back to as well, that, for all we want to say about Pitt's offense, for all the flaws we want to find, they put up 31. They scored 3 touchdowns in the second half, which is pretty good. They put up 31 points on offense and overcame some poor field position. I don't disagree at all. David Ruckno says, how are we 48 hours away from the game? Yeah, I have to change the description on this video. I said it was 48 hours until the game. It's obviously 72 hours because today is only Wednesday. Let's scroll down here, get to a couple more. Robert Fry says, we may be overreacting. West Virginia may be a very good team this year. We may be better than we looked. I think West Virginia is better than I expected, but we'll see. I didn't expect JT Daniels to be very good. I thought he was better than I expected. I think Bryce Ford Wheaton was pretty good. He was better than I expected. I didn't expect CJ Donaldson to run for 125 yards and a touchdown on 7 carries. They have players. It's going to be interesting to see what their season looks like and if it's good enough to keep Neil Brown in place, but they've got good players. I don't think there's any doubt. Will C says, Bengali Kamara missed really bad on some run plays. I think Brandon George being hurt killed Pitt because Servassier Dennis couldn't rotate to other positions of need. Yeah, I think that's I think there's some truth to that. I think they would have rotated more if they had Brandon George available. Servassier Dennis played all but 1 snap on defense in the game. The only snap was late in West Virginia's final drive. He got hurt and came right back in on the next play. Bengali Kamara only missed 2 snaps. It was in the second quarter, West Virginia's 5th drive of the first half. Pitt's defense came out. Tyler Wiltz was playing that star linebacker position, and he played 2 snaps before Marquez Williams forced a fumble that Eric Howlett recovered, and that was the last time we saw anyone other than Bengali Kamara. Not necessarily because Wiltz did a bad job, but because I think it was, they wanted to give Wiltz an opportunity and then just never went back to him. So it'll be interesting to see if he rotates in a little bit more. Shane Simon played every snap in the base defense except 1. He's not in the Delta defensive 3rd down package. He just played in the base defense. He played all but 1 snap, and the only snap he missed is because his helmet came off. So not a lot of rotation at linebacker. Brandon George being out did not help in that regard. I think they'll want to rotate more. It'll be interesting to see this week because I don't know how many opportunities they'll get to actually rotate. With as fast as Tennessee's offense goes, with that tempo and snapping the ball 7 to 10 seconds, I mean, they're back on the line of scrimmage and they're going. It could be tough to move. It can be tough to swap guys in and out. It can be tough to rotate unless Tennessee rotates. If Tennessee subs, then you have chance to sub in some linebackers, make a line change along the defensive line, go 4 for 4. They used 23 combinations on the defensive line against West Virginia. I don't think they're going to have quite so many this week. I think those numbers are going to pare down just a little bit. Scroll down here. Reed Worth says, can we just take a moment to appreciate the job Pat Narduzzi has done with this program from last season to opening this season ranked, beating West Virginia, and now having another huge game in week 2? No doubt. Winning the ACC was huge, and then to follow that up by, entering a season that has a lot of expectations and, it's a credit to Narduzzi. He's built the roster, built the depth, and he's got the program in a really strong position. Zach Owen says, got to remember Joe Milton was the starting quarterback last year versus Pitt. Hendon Hooker came in when Milton was injured. Also don't have a first-round pick at quarterback position anymore. Those are great points, Zach. Show of hands for everyone who forgot those facts. Anyone? Hands? Anybody forget that Joe Milton started the game? Anybody forget that Joe Milton missed a number of wide open wide receivers? Anyone forget that Hendon Hooker probably would have had a better chance of making those passes, potentially winning the game if he had started the game. Anyone forget that Kenny Pickett is no longer on the team? Zach, we know all these things, all right? They're going to have to defend Hendon Hooker better than they defended Joe Milton. Joe Milton caused most of those incomplete passes, not Pitt's defense. They're going to have to defend that better. They're going to have to slow down Hooker. They're going to have to keep him in the pocket. Don't let him scramble. Get to him and pressure him, but also keep contained, and they're going to have to defend the receivers well. And yes, they don't have Kenny Pickett anymore. They have Keaton Slovis, who, for his flaws, had a pretty solid, borderline good first game. Actually, maybe not borderline. I think he made plays to win the game. He had a good first game. I'm not hedging on Keaton Slovis anymore. He had a good first game. 16 of 24 for 308 and a touchdown. That's a good first game. He didn't turn the ball over. He led a game-tying drive at the end of the game. Drove like 90-some yards, right? Let me make sure. I don't want to get this wrong. 92 yards. Drove 92 yards. He had a good first game. Now, he's probably not a first-round draft pick. I don't know if he is or not. But he had a good first game. He has a chance to have a really good second game. All right. We're all out of time. We're over that hour mark here. You guys hear me talk a lot nowadays since I do the morning pit every day, so I don't need to keep this going too much longer. But thanks so much for tuning in tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Get the morning pit every morning, Monday through Friday. And also, you'll know when we go live here for this Wednesday night show, and then also the Saturday when we go live for our post-game show after the Tennessee game. Stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all of our coverage leading into Saturday's game, 3:30 kickoff at Acrisure Stadium. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. Just all day, every day, people talking about Pitt. You're a Pitt fan. What more could you want? Panther-Lair.com. Thanks to everybody who was in the chat and the comments tonight. Thanks to Chris Gates Fitness. Go check it out, chrisgatesfitness.com for all of your health and fitness needs. Definitely go look at him. And thanks to all the super chatters. You guys definitely stepped up. I appreciate that tonight. We'll be back Thursday morning with another morning pit to get you ready for Pitt, Tennessee. And then we'll talk to you again live after the Tennessee game. I'll try to tweet out a start time once we have a general idea of when that might be. Tentatively talking maybe 10 o'clock. We'll start around 10. We'll go 10 to 11. Talk about Pitt, Tennessee at Acrisure Stadium. Can't wait. Should be a fun one. It should be exciting. We'll see what the outcome looks like. So thanks again. Have a great rest of the night. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you live after the Tennessee game on Saturday right here on YouTube.